Go. Hello and thanks for tuning in again. The last time we did a Triumph Stag V8, we fuel injected that. This time we're going to do this 1970 Bolwell EFI Roadster. Looks pretty flash, but it's just a simple 302 Windsor engine. And like last time, I'm going to inject it with a Holley HP computer. Like we did on the Triumph, we're going to use a Holley HP computer. That's this here. This is the ECU. And this is our unterminated loom. This is the way I like to buy them, because I like to do the wiring myself. Now, that's a pretty big loom. Lots and lots of wires. Looks pretty intimidating. It's not really that bad. There's plenty of labelling, so you can find your way through it without too much trouble. So we'll get started on this. We'll take the manifold off it, modify the manifold for injectors and injector holders, and we'll get the job done. I've taken the manifold off the car. It's a 302 Windsor, so it's quite a narrow manifold. Now what concerned me with this manifold was the angle of the runners here and getting the injector pintle close enough to the airstream. Now normally what I would use would be a Bosch 14mm O-ring style injector and these injector holders that I make. The only problem is that the injector's way up inside the hole there. And what concerns me, even after I cut some of these threads off, is that we're not going to have enough injector poking down into the manifold and reaching the airstream. So what I've done, excuse me, what I've done is I've bought these injectors. These came from CS Performance Injectors in Croquette in Minnesota. They were kind enough to flow 8 4-cylinder Volvo injectors for me. These are some kind of Volvo turbo injectors, but they've got a long extended pintle. So what I've done is I've made another set of injector holders. As you can see, they're a little bit different, and the injector sits at a different height as well. So as you can see, the injector's well down inside. So that puts the injector pintle right near the end of the threads. I've trimmed the threads there a little bit for this manifold. Okay, here's a cutaway of one of my injector holders, and you can see how far down that pintle protrudes down past the threads. So in this situation here, that should put the injector pintle right down into the airstream. This is the normal type of injector holder, and it's not going to get the pintle into the airstream at all. Now when I make these injector holders, that's what they look like in the raw, and I get John Marlowe from Specialised Anodizing on the Gold Coast to anodize them for me. I do blue for Fords and obviously orange ones for Chevs. Alright, so we've got our injector holders screwed into the manifold there. This is roughly where they're going to sit. Still got to level them up and so forth. I bought these fuel rails. These are just eBay fuel rails. They're not particularly expensive or anything, but they're Windsor ones, so they've got the correct angles and everything. So they will simply plug into there, and obviously I'm going to have to make up some little tabs to hold them down. So that's roughly what it's going to look like when it's all fitted up to the car. Now that we've got our injectors fitted, we've got our fuel rail, we're going to need something to meter the air. Now normally what you would use would be a 4-barrel throttle body, an Edelbrock, Holley, even one of the cheap Chinese ones. But they're actually still quite expensive. Even a cheapy one like an Aeroflow is still about $450, which is a fair bit of money just to meter the air. So what I found again on eBay was single throttle body LS1. These things are really cheap as chips to buy. That's $145 off eBay. So all I need to do is to mount that onto the top of the manifold. So what I've done there is I've used a 1-inch Holley spacer. That's just an open center spacer, and I've just relieved the edges there a little bit so that the throttle body butterfly actually opens up into it. I've scalloped little bits out there just to make it sit really nice. So that will bolt straight onto our manifold, and then our throttle body will bolt straight up onto that. Now what I like about these throttle bodies is that they come for a mere $146 with a throttle position sensor and an idle motor, and the idle motor is completely compatible with the Holley computer that we're going to use. It's a GM style stepper motor, idle motor, and of course the throttle body goes on here. There's a few other little ports in here for vacuum, for breather off the rocker cover and that sort of thing. But that's going to be our throttle body. I'll have to make a little adapter there because I'm going to put the 14-inch air cleaner back onto the top. As you can see, we've got most of the wiring done here. Through the magic of editing, we're nearly ready for a fire up. Now inside the distributor here, you can see that I've mounted a Hall effect sensor. There is another one a little bit further around here. You can see the wires running around to it. So that's our ref and sync, so that we can set this up to run sequentially. Now you can probably see that we still have some wires here to tuck away to tidy up. Now the reason for that is these wires here are for the idle air control motor. Now if you're doing this wire up at home on your own, there's something that you need to be aware of, and that is that in the Holley's own instructions, which I've printed out here, it's just a little bit too small to see there, so I've copied it onto a pad, but they tell you how to wire up the IAC motor. That's a GM style IAC motor, and because we're using an LS style throttle body on there, of course we've got the GM IAC motor. Now I'll hold this up to the camera so you can see it. This is how Holley tells you to wire it up: low, high, A, D, C, B on the IAC motor. If you wire it up that way and you're using this type of idle motor, it will not work. This is the correct way to wire it up: B1, B2, B8 and B9, and they're your letters there that are actually printed on the plug to the IAC motor. So if you're doing it, be a little bit careful of that, because you will get that wrong. Alright, so we're just about ready now to fire this up. We'll get the distributor cap on and so forth. Now we did try running this yesterday with the throttle body on it, but the noise from the idle motor was horrendous. And the reason for that, I've got another one here, is this hole in the throttle body whistles like you would not believe. The noise is just absolutely atrocious. You would not live with it. So what I've done to try and quieten it down is I've put this little tube into where the IAC motor is and bolted it on there so it can't accidentally fall inside. So that's our conversion there to take some of the noise away from it. Alright, so we'll put the distributor cap back on again and we'll try and fire it up. Right, what we're going to do now is program this ECU with all the variables of this particular engine. Now it's a 302 Windsor, it is a 347 stroker, so we'll go ahead now and get it programmed. So first thing you do is open the software, obviously, and we're going to create a new global folder. So we open that up and we look for what's closest to our engine, and that is this one down here. Multi-point fuel injection, cam stock. It's near stock, the cam, so we'll start off with that one. So you highlight that, whoops, that, open that. Then we're going to be Holley 4-barrel or multi-point fuel injection, so we're multi-point fuel injection, so we'll go that, we open that. We want our idle to be about 800 RPM, but that's adjustable later on. And we'll go 36-pound injectors multi-point fuel injection, and we open that. Okay, we don't have to worry about that just now. Okay, we want 25 degrees idle and 34 degrees wide open for the spark. These are all just base settings right now. Okay, so that's all been automatically programmed into the computer. So what we do now is we go into the system and we go to engine parameters. Now on our engine parameters, we're 8 cylinders, so that's correct. We're 347 cubic inches, so 350 is near enough, but okay, we'll go exactly 347. We're speed density, that's correct. We've got a Bosch oxygen sensor, and we only have one oxygen sensor. Our flood clear mode, we might just bring that up a little. We'll bring that up to about 80%. So that means you've got to put your foot more than 80% down on the accelerator. While you're cranking, the injectors won't fire, so that'll be your flood clear. We're multi-point fuel injection, so we'll leave that. We'll leave it here as the multi-point fuel injection 36, which is 36-pound injectors. Our pump prime time, 5 seconds, yep, that's okay. Our fuel pressure is about 43 psi, so that's okay. We only have one set of injectors. Our injector angle, now, it's not the angle of the injectors in the manifold. This refers to the angle of the crankshaft in relation to when the injectors fire. And here we're going to go to paired bank to bank. We'll have to change that a little bit later, but we will be sequential. So now down here we're just going to make these injectors a little bit smaller, because in fact we're only running 24-pound injectors. So we'll just bring that number down there to 24. There we go, near enough. And they're high impedance injectors, so that's okay. So now we go to we go to ignition parameters. So we go up here to our first drop down menu, and we're going to be custom because we're running a distributor. So we'll go custom, just ignore that for the moment. Our reference angle is going to be 60 degrees. Oh, that hasn't changed. Custom. Okay, there we go. And now we're going to configure our custom. So we're going to be one pulse, one fire. That means that our Hall effect sensor does 8 teeth on 2 crankshaft revolutions. So that's one pulse, one fire. Our cam sensor is a single pulse. That's our second Hall effect sensor, which only has 1 tooth on it. And we're on digital rising. We're not waste fire because we're using a MSD, so we're actually points output. Okay, so that's got most of that set for us. The only other thing that we need to do is tell it it's a Holly sensor. Well, it seems it already knows that. We'll just have a look at our map here. This is our spark map. This is what the computer has automatically drawn for us. So that all looks pretty good. We'll have a look at the fuel, and we'll go to the learn table. As you can see, it's got nothing on its mind because it hasn't been started yet, so it hasn't learned anything. And our target air fuel ratio, this is again what the computer has automatically written for us. So you can see up here in the high load areas we're 12.5 to 1, and down here in the light cruise we're 14 to 1, which is a good place to start. And then you've got things like accelerator enrichment. You can pretty much leave these things alone. They're pretty close to right as soon as you start the engine up. Okay, so what we'll do now is we'll transfer all of this to our ECU, and we'll fire it up and see what happens. Okay, so we've got our computer open now. We're going to turn the ignition on, and we're going to download from ECU. We've loaded all that information to the ECU. So now we're going to go online, so it's synced up there. Wait for it to go out, that's good. Now we'll go to the USB link, which links the laptop to the ECU itself. That's good, it's all there. We'll turn on the gauges, and we'll start up. Now you can see here it says heating, so that's heating the O2 sensor. This says stall, obviously we're not running. And of course everything else is still. So crank it up. Alright, you can see our air fuel ratio there is at about 13 to 1. We're idling at about 700 RPM. Our map's at 33%. Air temperature's awfully high. I think that must be unplugged. I'll have to check that, but that seems awfully high air temperature. Our coolant temperature 138 degrees, so that's warming up nicely there. Seems our voltage is down a little bit. That's saying 11.7 volts. I'll just see if that'll come up. Looks like we've got a bit of a voltage problem there. Whilst we were wiring up, might have left the wire off the alternator or something like that. So that needs to be looked at. Anyway, over here you can see that it's gone into the learn and it's in closed loop, so it is learning. So the next thing will be take it for a drive.
Yeah.